Well, I think pretty much all moms would agree that getting dinner on the table is complicated and it can be super difficult. And as a result, many of us end up eating out and getting takeout, getting convenience foods way more often than we like and way more often than honestly we can afford. And so I've got some easy meal tips for you today, and they are going to be especially useful for right now when we are in the midst of back to school time. Anytime your schedule feels busy or overwhelming, or meals just feel overwhelming, these are going to be three tips you are not going to want to miss. Make sure that you are tuning in. Let's jump in. Well, hey there, I am Jennifer Roskamp, a certified life coach and homeschool mom of 9 who is passionate about helping women just like you embrace the here and now while also being focused on creating the life you actually want. As a midlife mom in her 40s, about to be a mom in my 50s, I've realized that it's so easy to lose yourself in caring for your family, your home, and all the things. Until one day you realize you're not even sure who you are anymore or what you even want in life. So, on this podcast, we're going to work on managing yourself well so that you can manage all of the other things and people well too. So, let's dive into what it means to manage your home, your time, your family, and yourself well. This is the Intentional Midlife Mom podcast. So, I know for most moms, getting dinner on the table every night can be a big challenge. And it becomes an even more complex challenge during especially busy seasons, during especially busy times of the year. And as I'm recording this episode, it is back to school time. Some moms, their kids have already gone back to school. Some moms, it's right around the corner. For homeschooling moms like myself, it's also just kind of a time where life is about to get real different. And real a lot busier. And so that can make dinner all the more stressful. Now, if you've heard and maybe even tried creating a meal plan before, and maybe you've said, yeah, that's not for me. Maybe it has been too complicated. It hasn't worked for you. I want to encourage you to give this episode a listen because I think again, having been at this with coaching and helping women as a coach for almost 10 years now, where a meal plan becomes complicated for a lot of women is because they think about creating a meal plan for 7 nights a week. And that is a whole lot of coming up with meal plans. And so it can be that's what makes it overwhelming right there. And so it's really with that in mind. I've got 3 tips that are going to make getting dinner on the table easier. And really it's with that, it's kind of knowing that that's a common struggle in mind that the foundation for these 3 tips really came from. And so if you've never created a meal plan and had it work well for you, or maybe you haven't stuck with it, I encourage you to try these 3 steps, these 3 tips. It's really going to make things easier for you. Okay, so tip number 1, this is going to be a quick, short episode. I know that you are here for the tips. Just give me the tips and give them to me quickly and let me try them out. So here you go. Tip number 1 is to know your busiest nights of the week. I want to challenge you and encourage you to look at your calendar and choose just your 2 busiest nights of the week. Know when those busiest nights are going to be. And so, what this means is that over the weekend, you're going to be looking at your calendar, at your scheduler, at your planner to look at what the week ahead is going to be like. Now, I like to plan for my week ahead on a Friday afternoon because I really like, and let's be real, it doesn't always happen. But my preference is to do it on a Friday afternoon because I can get that peek ahead at my week. I can start to see kind of where some of the struggle points are going to be. I can start to just kind of wrap my brain around what's going to be happening. And then I can kind of have the buffer of the weekend before I actually have to jump in and start actually dealing with the week, living in the week. And so I really do like doing that on a Friday afternoon. If you've never tried that, I suggest trying that. It really just provides, if you can get that nice buffer of the weekend, man, that really feels good. It's nice just to know, you know what, I've got the week, I've kind of got a handle on it already. I don't need to think about it right now. I don't need to worry about it right now. You know, when you're in the middle of a Saturday afternoon and your mind starts throwing things at you like, oh, how's this going to work? Or how's that going to work? You can say, you know what, I've already kind of done my preliminary thing. I don't need to think about it right now because I've already done that. And so I think about planning on Friday and kind of looking at that stuff, I think about that as planning in pencil. That's how I teach it. And that basically means that nothing is set in stone because the week is still a little bit far off. There's a lot of opportunities for obstacles and things to change and all of that stuff. And so I think about it as planning in pencil. And then how you're going to follow that up is probably on Sunday evening. Then you're going to haul that plan back out and you're going to see, is this still relevant? Has anything changed? And what else do I need to add into it? What do I need to put more as a set in stone thing on my calendar or my schedule for the week? Now, for me, again, with so many people who live here, I've got 9 kids, 8 still living at home. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of activities. There's a lot of places to go, a lot of people to manage, and a lot of things to keep going. And so I really only plan a day or two in advance in pen. That's that more set in stone pen. If it's 3 or more days out, I'm pretty much always planning in pencil, meaning I'm not getting too hung up on this is the way it's going to be. I'm not stressing myself out about things that I can't seem to figure out yet because they're just too far off. So, all that to say, on the weekend, take a look at what your week ahead is going to be and try to figure out what are going to be the 2 busiest nights, because those are going to be the nights that you want to follow up with steps 2 and 3 that I'm going to give you here, because you're really going to appreciate having your meals done, basically done for you, quick and easy on those 2 busiest nights. Would it be great to have them every night of the week? Of course. But again, that is overwhelming for most people. So, what we want to do is just focus on the 2 busiest nights and basically give ourselves the night off on those 2 nights of the stress that dinner brings. And for most women, it's the planning of the dinner that's more stressful. I know it's true for me. It's the idea of coming up with what's for dinner that's actually harder than making it. That's the most frustrating, taxing part. And so, what a meal plan allows us to do is it allows us to think ahead of time so that we're doing all of that thinking. I talk about this all the time as a coach. I say if we can separate the thinking from the doing, it makes both pieces of that so much easier. So often we expect ourselves to think, figure things out, make a decision, and then execute right away. And what we fail to realize is we've already drained ourselves so much in the thinking, the planning, and the figuring that we're not showing up on all cylinders to actually start carrying it out. So anytime that we can separate out that thinking and planning from the doing or the execution, that works so much easier. And that's essentially what a meal plan does. You're thinking about ahead of time what the meal is going to be so that when it comes time to actually prepare the meal, well, you've got that all done. You just need to look at what's on the paper and just set it into motion. So, step number 1 is to know your busiest nights of the week and know that the next 2 steps are going to be plugging the actual meals into to those 2 busiest nights. So, step number 2 or tip number 2 is to plan the meals for just those 2 busiest nights. And what that looks like is planning the main dish and any side dishes. It's planning the meal in its entirety, because that is also hard. Sometimes you know that maybe you might know, well, I know I'm going to throw some chicken in the oven, but what's really hard to come up with on the day that you're making chicken is now what, right? And so we want to take everything into account. We want to plan everything. Now, if you struggle with getting the whole meal kind of thought through, I actually have a meal planning template that actually has your main dishes and a couple of side dishes all thought out for you. It's a done for you meal plan. I've got that as part of my free template pack. If you don't have my planning templates for intentional moms, just comment anywhere you're listening to this podcast. Comment with templates and we'll make sure that we send you a link to get those. And it's just one of the things in the template pack. And no, you don't have to be a mom to find benefits in it. And there's great things there for cleaning and other getting stuff done, templates that you'll find helpful. So just comment templates and we'll send them to you. But it really is tip number 2 says plan the meal in its entirety for those 2 nights. That's step number 2. Think through it all. Again, so that you have no thinking to do on Tuesday if that's your busiest day, one of those busiest days. And then step number 3 or tip number 3 is to make sure that you have on hand the things that you need for those meals. Now, the smartest and quickest and simplest meals I find are the ones when I'm choosing meals and recipes based on things that I know I'm going to have on hand pretty much all the time because they're part of my meal staples. So, and so that is something that can help make this even easier is for you to think about, well, I know I've always got eggs on hand. I know I've always got bread on hand. I know I've always got, whatever it might be. I know I've always got chicken on hand. And you can, again, make this even easier for yourself by making sure that you're choosing things that you're probably not going to have to run to the store, for many things, if at all. Now, learn from the mistake that I have made, which is especially if you have more people who are making food in your house than just you. Back in the day when all of my kids were young and I was the one making the meals and serving the meals and I was the only one dealing with the food, I always knew what I had on hand. When something was used up, I knew I was out of it. But what I have now is I have so many kids who are making meals because they're making meals at different times because they've got practice or they've got work. And so even though we have a list right on the refrigerator, and I've told them, please, if you use something out, write it. If you use something up, please write it on the list. And in a perfect world, they do that. But in the world we live in, they don't often do that. And so when I choose meals that have ingredients that I should have on hand and I haven't actually checked it, I have gotten myself into trouble more than once. So learn from my mistake. And even if you know that you should have these things on hand, but you also know that other people get into the food, do yourself a favor and check on the weekend to see, do I need to go to the store to get any of the ingredients necessary for these meals these 2 nights of the week? On the weekend is the time to check for that because that's typically going to be when you've got more time to go to the store. But really, in reality, as long as you've got what you need on hand before the day number one, before one of these 2 days that you've chosen, that is going to be your busiest night of the week, as long as you have made sure that you know what you have and you've gotten to the store to get anything that you didn't have before that day shows up, you're going to be fine. So that is tip number 3. So again, tip number 1 is to look at your schedule, know your busiest 2 nights of the week, and know that you're going to follow steps 2 and 3 on those 2 busiest nights. So you got to take that peek ahead at your week and figure out what it's going to be like and what it's going to look like. Tip number 2 is to plan the meals, the entirety of each meal for just those 2 nights of the week. And it becomes even simpler if you choose simple meals, maybe 5 ingredients or less, using ingredients that you know you already have on hand. Step number 3, or tip number 3, says make sure that you have everything you need for those meals. Don't make the assumption, if it's a possibility, that you don't have the things that you think you do. And now is the time to go to the store and grab what you need to actually be able to execute on those meals. Again, just those 2 nights of the week. So I hope that if you have tried meal planning before and it has been hard for you, I hope that you give this a try, because in a lot of cases, it's complicated. It feels complicated because we think about planning a meal for the entire 7 nights of the week. We think that's the right way to do it. We may have even been told that's the right way to do it. And I say, you know what? If that's overwhelming and if that's making you walk away from meal planning altogether, especially on 2 nights when you can really use it, then just let's break it down. Let's make it smaller. Let's just plan meals for those 2 nights of the week. So, those are the 3 tips I had for you to make meals easier. I cannot wait to see and hear. Feel free to leave me a comment if you find these helpful and you actually use these. We love comments, we love reviews, so feel free to do that anytime. Until we talk again, make it an intentional day.